The book of Job, chapter 25, verse 3. Can his forces be numbered? On whom does his light not rise? Hi, this is Phil from Christian Connoisseur. This is just some footage from Kingdom Come Deliverance 2. I'm not sure if this footage was downloaded, so it might not be as HD. I think this is from a couple months ago. I haven't played it in a while. But what I really wanted to do today was just make a video about some of my role-playing games. I wanted to talk a little bit about the D&D 5e, my Christ Dies Edition version, with the world setting called The Eternal Balance. I just wanted to go over a couple points, some of the negative points and some of the more going towards the positives. So I just wanted to just make a little video and just discuss some of this stuff. And maybe this type of, I might make a higher polished version so I can just show people this video, so I don't have to tell them about my, have them read like a full textbook, right? Okay. But, so for my world, I might go over some of the negative stuff. In my world, I just disable sorcery for players. So, players don't have access to magic, they don't have access to magical items, they don't have access to spells. Also, they don't worship the quote-unquote the gods or the goddesses and all that nonsense, right? That stuff is hard locked and hard restricted for the players, especially as the norm and starting out for your character. In theory, you could, while playing the game, make a moral choice and maybe you get involved with something like, something dark or pagan. But it's not the normal that's you're allowed to have access to. So, some of the negative, I don't know, sometimes it comes off as a little bit controversial to some people. So, I also full restrict from classes the Warlock, Wizard, and Sorcerer. I'm probably going to make Bard more of like a half caster. So I'm going to change the Bard a little bit, and the Bard's going to be allowed in the world. It's very spellcast heavy. So I'm going to make some changes to that, and I'll work that out. Okay. So what I do instead is I have a bunch of either reskins or full heavy replacements in the world. On top of which I have a bunch of extra content allowed and enabled in the game. So you're not really losing any value. It's just a little bit different. So instead of magical items, I call them divine relic items or divine relic equipment. So there's a lot of faith. There's like a lot of Christian, biblical Christian stuff. So what it I feel like what it help does is that it promotes the positive values, and then it kind of I feel like I mostly just ignore a lot of these negative things, and sometimes it comes up. I'm changing the terminologies, I'm changing the words. I'm also hard locking or hard going away from some of these other things. So it's instead of spells in my world, I have miracles. So it's instead of saying I'm casting this spell using this spell slot, I use the word performing instead of casting. I call them miracles in my world instead of spells. Some of them could be a reskin. A lot of the other ones, they could just be a hard replacement. I might make some of my own. I also might just reskin some of 5e stuff. Because my world, for the most part, does use 5e. It's just a lot of homebrew and a lot of custom stuff. With my own setting and story and world and stuff. My own lore. So, there's that. So it's like performing a miracle using, I call them like miracle slots. So you have like, 3 like level 1 miracle slots, or you could have like, 2 or 2 level 2 or 1 level 3 miracle slots. So a lot of it is about changing the word and changing the terminology and kind of like retraining my own brain, and then players in my world, they can retrain their brain. Really not that difficult. A lot of people aren't that familiar with it anyways, so it wouldn't be much of a hardship. And yeah, so, and I have some of my own personal custom classes. Some of this stuff I gotta flesh out a little bit more. I do sometimes use something like ChatGPT to help me build some basic class ideas. What I think I want to do is I'm probably going to print them off, or I have them on like a Google document, and it might help me make a base to start with, and then I'm going to sit down, I'm going to like look through like all the stuff on it. I'm going to have to change a bunch of the words and like kind of like make it like clean it up a little bit, because AI can still make a lot of mistakes, and it's not my personal touch. It's just nice to have a base to start with. So I'm building some of my own personal classes. I'm working on my own stuff. I might also retweak and reskin or readjust some of the other classes the players start out with. So there's like obviously there's like the core classes, and there's some additional like DLC classes, on top of which there's also like kind of like my own homebrew too. And a lot of stuff when players start the game out, that stuff is kind of like static, and like it's there initially, and then like it doesn't really get interacted with ever again. So it's really not that big of a deal. I feel like even for a lot of the stuff, it's not that big of a deal. Cause like eventually, like if you have like a core class or something, you just kind of level up. And for me, I'm kind of doing every 3 sessions roughly. I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 sessions you get a level up. I might do a milestone periodically too. I might give some boosts to the characters. I'm trying to do more of a party level up too. Right now in the world, we're about level 5. So yeah. I hard restrict the full casters. I allow the half caster classes. I'm probably gonna start finding some different changes or just some different names and terms for some of these stuff. I was thinking about trying out this new system. I might make a whole brand new thing about it though. I was trying some lower fantasy stuff. I was trying to call my world more like my game more low fantasy. So I was thinking about Dragonbane RPG. It's probably a lot easier because it doesn't really have magic in it as a norm. Oh, by the way, there's people playing pickleball around, so if you hear this, pickleball, that's what that is. You'll honestly, you might not even hear it, but that's just what it is. I mean, I'm just kind of out by the park, so I figured I'd make a little chill little video. But yeah, so a couple of my class ideas that I wanted to work on, and some of these could just become subclasses towards the regular classes anyways. So there's like the hunter. There, I'm building like a prophet class. One that I built also is called a lantern knight. So those are 3 of them. And there are some pre-existing classes out there also, which again aren't really like, some of them are like more like the DLCs for like the 5e, or even some of them could be from like Pathfinder or something. And people might have homebrewed them. Like there's like an alchemist class where you kind of like mess around with potions and stuff. I'm trying to think. There's a handful of other classes. They're like some kind of like a marksman, maybe like a crossbow type of class. There could be also, there's a few other ones. Yeah, and then I was even messing around with the idea of a class called the theologian class. It's kind of like almost like a reskin or even like a reflavor of the wizard, where again it uses miracles, and they're like they study religious books and stuff, like a religious scribe a little bit, like a scholar. Um, and like I'm also messing around with a bunch of other ideas too. So, and I'm working on some more custom, like what we call like archetypes maybe. There could be some new systems, some new skills, some new abilities, some new ways to interact with the world. So it's like you're never really losing. Like you're always gonna keep gaining more stuff. Oh, and even with like the hunters, for example, there's like the mage hunter. I call him like a relic hunter, almost like a witcher, I guess, like a supernatural hunter. And like the hunter could just be its own core class, and then there's like 3 different subclasses. Some of my problems are it takes a lot of work to like flesh out a class, and then like I gotta play test them, and I gotta get people who are interested in them, and without making them look pretty and not putting a lot of effort into them, it's hard to really get people to care. And then and like obviously like most of the normal classes still exist. Just like there's a lot of spells in the game, so I've been reskinning them to miracle players just to change the terminology when they use them, and stop being consumed with like spellcasting. And yeah, it's really mostly normal. Like I feel like because my world has deep Christian and religious themes in it, I also kind of view it as more. It's like there's a percentage of being neutral and like normal, than then like having like faith and religion. So like you don't have to be a super religious person to play the game, but you do have to be affirming and accepting and supportive of Christianity. But you don't like have to you don't really have to be a Christian, and you don't have to do all these things. It definitely would help a lot. But I have plenty of people who are like more secular. But it's like they're open-minded to the faith. So there's that. And like in like a lot of the classes, like there's like the paladins or like the clerics. They're more like a Christianized class to begin with. So they use like holy, it's like a lot of it's changing the aesthetics and changing it to make it more like using these like divine holy abilities and effects. They can still heal. They can still like still solve problems and help people and stuff. But and then like there's like the fighter, the ranger, there's like the monk. There's a whole bunch of other classes, right? A lot of them have like martial archetypes. So really, about when it comes to stuff like that, I probably want to add on some more subclass variations, and then change a few things here and there. But it's like when people hear like I say something like, no magic in the world. Some people initially are kind of they freak out, but like really it's not that big of a deal. And I might limit some of the other I want to make the world a little bit more like lower fantasy. And even this game here, Kingdom Come Deliverance, it's like a great example of like basically like a no fantasy almost. It's like just fully realistic. This game functions and runs really fine. So I don't know. I'm just kind of working on some ideas. I'm testing some stuff out. I'm kind of experimenting with some stuff. I kind of view the game more as like an alpha stage where it's playable, it's out. I think I'm on like episode 8 for my recordings. I think I have like 30 episodes, 30 sessions I played. But now I'm on like 8 episodes uploaded. So you can check those out. And like, honestly, at the end of the day, it is also just about being fun. It's a fun game. It's a fun experience with friends. It doesn't have to be super serious. Not everything doesn't have to be super religious or super serious. I think it's just about building like the canon, the lore, like the story, the characters, the major mechanics. It's like kind of like stripping out a lot of like the paganism, like the Satanism, the occult, all this dark, unholy, vile, twisted crap. It's just kind of taking that stuff and like ripping it off and removing it and like throwing it away. And then stop focusing and stop fixating, on all those things constantly. And then like have like a neutral point where there's lots of neutral stuff in the world, that's fine. It's debatable and subjective, but it's fine. Then trying to promote, encourage, put tons of more wholesome, virtuous, good options and good access in and to and about the world itself. Kind of like hard bake them in. Like having God be a part of the world, having like the Bible or the church, or just like even like just like righteous stuff. It could be it could be like knights, or there's different guilds, there's different orders. It's like and also introducing a lot of neutral stuff that it either could exist or already does. Like some characters could drink. They could be doing some type of drinking stuff. It doesn't even have to be alcoholic, and they could also be. It could also be like there could be like different contests, like an archery contest, or like a contest of skills, or different trainers, and lots of different guilds, like a monster hunting guild. There could be like even this, like it could be like some kind of an arena, different let players kind of try to test themselves out back and forth, and like push themselves and stuff. And like I come up with these divine relic items. You come up with lots of stuff for people to do and have fun and interact and mess around with. That's where like and giving people tons of freedom and the ability to kind of do what they want. But I kind of feel like let people have the freedom to do what they want in a sandbox world where you kind of control some of the knobs and some of the volume of how much stuff you do or don't see constantly. I feel like making it more of like a lower fantasy where there's like there's like a dragon, right? Or there might be like a griffin in the air, or some type of like a bigger creature, or maybe some fantasy, like a little bit some fantasy races. Like there might be some elves or dwarves or humans, maybe a halfling. And then there might be some exotic stuff. And the enemies can be viewed as evil. Like there could be like a necromancer or like a sorcerer that's an evil person. And like the church hates them. The world generally just like hates evil stuff. Like villains will use like enchantments and stuff. But like that's like, and you kind of like, I feel like I take the paintbrush and I paint it evil. I paint it negative, and like I call and reference and describe it as bad. And people see that as a norm. Like that stuff is quote unquote evil. And it's painted evil and it's shown in a bad light. And maybe it's not even like super common. Like maybe a big villain of the story can like use some dark powers and twist spells against their players. And like the players use like holy powers, or they even even kind of like the idea of like Camelot. Like there's like Prince Arthur, and there's like Uther the king, or a bunch of like Knights of the Round Table. Like they use martial weapons to fight against like magic, and maybe they have like holy abilities and stuff. Maybe there's like a paladin could have their sword be ignited on fire. Different crossbow types of effects. Maybe you could even have like an animal companion or something. And you fight against like spellcasting and stuff. And that stuff doesn't have to be super common. And it could be like paganism or like the occult. That stuff can exist in the world, or even like demons. A lot of that stuff, but like you fight against it. And it's not normalized as like morally good. It's normalized as morally evil. And like the good guys are good and like the bad guys are bad. There can be like moral grayness for like the stories and certain choices and stuff. But generally it's like you want to have like clear foundational pillars. That's kind of what I've been kind of working on for the world. Yeah, and there also could be like angels that could exist in the world, and there's a lot of options. But I feel like it's kind of just like drawing a line and just taking a lot of the bad crap and just kind of shoving it off more to the side, saying it exists, it's a prop in the game, in the world, but maybe I'm going to use it less. And here's a huge pool of like awesome or clean, normal, pure stuff, or even just neutral stuff, and that stuff is the norm. So that's kind of my goal. That's why I call it Christized, or I'm trying to Christize or Christizing, this world and this game. I don't want to sterilize things. I don't want to sanitize it. I don't want to just strip all the fun away. This isn't supposed to be like, like I'm censoring everything. It's just more that because like I want it to be like kind of intense and fun, but like I'm changing like the perspective. I'm changing the the way, like, the mindset and the way I choose to look at it, and how, like, what I give the players access to and stuff too. So like the norm is like when you would fight an enemy, you'd have like a sword in your hand. And maybe you could even like look up to heaven and pray to God, or ask God for help. Ask the Lord God Almighty for help, right? You could just pray, say a prayer. You could just even just try to be righteous. And you get help from your friends. And it's just like, yeah, I feel like it's normalizing a more realistic, like, Christian style of world, and it just stops focusing so much on, like the paganism and like the spellcasting and all that. Like that stuff still exists. It's just very slim percentage margin. But it's considered like I probably like consider it like more of a low or like a very low fantasy. There's some fantasy stuff, but it's just like a lot less. All right, thanks for watching. I appreciate it. I'm sure there's a lot of stuff I need to work on, talking about more. But thanks for watching. All right, Godspeed.